Hey, muy buenas noches, everyone. I hope everybody's doing well, blessed, and enjoying family. As always, muchas gracias to everyone for everyone's words, wishes, prayers, the time and love you guys extend and share with me. From the Cora, se los agradezco. Thank you. Also, do please like, share, and subscribe. I would highly appreciate it. But anyways, to get into the story on hand today, today is gonna be one of them where, on a personal tip, I would answer a couple questions I've been asked numerous times. Right? I want to start to answer whatever I'm asked. Right? To show respect. But anyways, I've been asked on the type of things that grajedas were doing. Right? And also, the type of politic they were doing against each other when we were in the shoe, when everybody was slammed. Right? So in this, I would pin them together and answer or try to answer both of them. Right? Again, I can only speak about my personal experience, everyone knows, and I hope I'm able to answer it correctly. Right? But anyways, I'll take you back to 2002, two around there. You know, it's when you could say that Grajeda, well, at least Wino, right, was at its peak of shady stuff. At the end of 2002, beginning is when they would try to okey doke me on that validation package or whatever them dumb 3 points, right? And I had came back with people throwing them 1030s or telling on me that I had orders to stab every hoot on the yard, and it was just BS that them cats that wanted to maintain the yard because I challenged them for it told on me to get me off the yard, right? So they shot me to Corcoran. When I first got to Corcoran, they shot me to a Fort Wright. When I arrived there, of course, I arrived like everyone. Papitos. I sent my paperwork to the ones that were in charge. At first, they set me up with a paisa I speak on, right? Jaime, that lived out from El Monte, and the guy that had everything. Well, at first I thought for Artie, right, from King Cobras, was Travieso. I spoken on him before for those that remember. And so again, I was just a simple sureño, right, as everyone else. And we weren't there together very long, but the time there, the first week he asked me in the group yard if I could help him run the rutina and help him maintain an eye, right? Because he wanted more so to stay in the shadows when he would literally put it on blast. He was in charge of everything, right? And I understand it is a time where well, a lot of camaradas from MS, they had a little chip on their shoulder, right? And understandable. But anyways, I supported the homie, just doing the duties of any camarada that would be asked, right? And as time went by, a little trust built, and a couple more years, basically, he told me that, when it came to 4 block, it was given from Artie to Wino from La Rana. Kind of like a respect thing. I don't know what you would call it, but whatever came out of there went to Wino, right? Is what made it a little weird at the end, right? When Artie decided to clip Wino, it was surprising because they were they were buddy buddies, right? Everybody knew, Scandalous Minds thinks the same, right? Nevertheless, you can't speak ill about a Pili because that's sealing your tomb right inside. And I just advise the homie, Like throughout the years, I've ran into wino, ran into issues that wino caused. Just to stay trucha, right? Just camaradas, just stay trucha. And we left it at that, right? That yard. Of course, the homie, he was new at things. So he always asked me, just preguntas on how to go about certain things. And then another couple yards, and basically we're talking, and he said he didn't feel comfortable about a directive or an order that Wino had put out for him when it came to pilis, right? Or high place camaradas that are in the known that got there. So we started speaking, and he told me Wino requested, out of respect, don't matter who you are, you get to a pad, you're gonna show your paperwork. As everyone knows, I got done by Garfield from Orange County, the Pili, right, with the Federicos. I didn't know until my second validation, but anyways, and I told him, that's normal. There ain't no butts or ribs. They arrive, they can move from wherever they're at. It's not a common thing. So of course, they're gonna show their papiros, but if they're pilis, sometimes they feel they don't have to, right? But Wino was directing Travieso to not just ask for the paperwork, but to show the 114 lockup order or the transfer order why it was getting moved. So that's a tricky thing, right? But then again, it's a directive coming straight from Wino. And I told the camarada, you're being put in the spot. And I told him, well, that's how I feel. And I told him, look, if a Pili comes, he might not even feel like showing you his paperwork, you know. But you go off and treat him and want to see his lockup order and why he's there, he's going to have an issue with it. Because he's going to take it as you're implying something. But then again, you're holding you're holding the place for a member, and that's his directives, right? The problem lied with he didn't keep the directive. Throughout the years I learned is when there's things like that make you feel weary, it's best to keep him, right? To cover your back. If they're never needed, that's firmes. But when you put in a spot like that, it's sometimes you can make some powerful enemies by following orders. And then when you took that responsibility for someone that that you know it's constantly at war with his own brothers, and it's a shady individual, of course you need to do them extra things to cover yourself. It's part of knowing where we're at. They're above us and they could easily just wash us up. Is just the reality of things, right? Anyways, to not make this long, I want to get to the point of answering. When we were there, I don't know, maybe a month or so, right? On a layover. He wasn't even staying. It was just a layover till he went to B yard. Cause some medical tip, right? Uh, Chavo from Bakersfield got there, and he was just waiting for a bed in B yard, right, which is the validator yard in Corcoran. And Chavo's a veterano too when it came to the M. He held, antiquity, power, and everybody knew that. You know, and at the time when we were in the shoe, I'll be sincere with you, Chavo's well considered a firmes pili, cool pili. I understand, as I will touch later on, right? when he got the shoe, how he became a scandalous individual when it came to camaradas, specifically his hometown camaradas, right? But anyways, at the moment he got there, homeboy travieso, of course, con todo respeto, I need to see Papiros, Chavo shot him. He could have played that dig, excuse my language part, and not showed him, period, point blank. But he did. And then under conversations, I guess it came out, why they had moved him. He spoke on it verbally or through appeals, right? And I'll be sincere with you, once he spoke on it and he put it in black and white and shot it to you, should have left it there, you know? But again, the homie was with that chip to want to do things right, and I totally understand that, right? He requested he needed to see his lockup order, just to make sure things verified that they were directives from BR, right? And Chavo took offense. He came down on him straight up, You know how long I've been in the organization. You know, not no one on BR could even request this of me, referring to Pilis, right? And it didn't matter how much Travieso said dispensa, right? Chavo felt offended, disrespected by the fact that by asking for the lockup order, you're basically telling them, they're always unwary. So you're basically telling them there's talk that something weird on why he's moving. Again, Chavo, he's where he's at. Before he leaves, long before he leaves, he's already addressing his carnales, telling them the move's gonna happen. Because believe me, Judas are letting them be in the known. As I'm pretty sure people in Corcoran knew of his arrival, right? But again, Wino knew what he was doing, right? He was rubbing people the wrong way just to show him that he had that power. Second of all, at the time there was talks always about that the Mesa system, but it was still, as far as everybody knew, Corcoran belonged to Artie. So the Grajedas, they rubbed Billy's the wrong way right at this time, and Chavo felt more offended. So of course he started doing his thing. It got to the point where Chavo told him, "Look, homie, I ain't gonna shoot you nada. You feel the way you feel, you know, handle your business. But you handle your business. One way or another, let's talk to the Judas. You come down to my cell and handle your business." So for those that that been there know them words carry a lot of damage, right? To for a Billy to actually feel that offended, and he started doing his thing. He wrote B Yard, old man from Watts, got right behind Chavo, started asking questions, and Mike Boo too, and at the end of the day, I'll close it like this. Wino was so scandalous, right? That when Chavo addressed him directly, like, you send this directive, if not, I want your soldado done. I want him dealt with ASAP. But like now, and just to be sincere, Wino being that big Tecato coward individual, right? That always was used to washing up camaradas just to please himself. He told Chavo Chales, the homie never had a position. He must have misunderstood it. by this, you know, we had already discussed this, me and Travieso, and I told him, just apologize and offer him that you would pay with blood for him. You didn't mean it like that, forget Wino. Stop going to Wino for him to resolve something. Go straight to Chavo and try to resolve it by pr- promising him you're gonna take care of business for him. Or if he feels he needs to get whacked, that you will do it. A lot of people are not down for it. When I was busted, I understood if I messed up and I had a stabbing coming, I bucked up and allowed it to happen and go patch myself. It's part of being a soldado, right? Nevertheless, I seen the face, right? And we went back in, and the camarada went out and never came back. He locked it up because he felt it was going to happen regardless, right? Because before Wino answered Chavo, he had gotten a travieso, and you have that on appeal with the directive. He played it off as if you have it so you could show it to Chavo, and Wino knew exactly he didn't have it because he addressed when he sent it that the minute the eyes stops reading it, he was to rip up and flush. Anyways, he made sure he didn't have it. As then when he addressed Chavo and told him that one misunderstood, tell him to show you the directive. So Travieso smelled there and he knew it was done. He wasn't willing to pay with blood either. You know, me personally being a lifer, I would have played with blood however it came. But then again, I would have known better than to follow with a directive like this, especially when the Billy had already given you the respect and addressed why he got moved and how everybody in BR was already expecting him and were aware of. Is when Chavo got over there to BR, I think he started pressing a lot of issues. Is when Artie was a smart individual. He seen supporting Wino was going to lead to him being in deeper stuff than what he was already for claiming half of California belonged to him. The point of the matter, the homie got cornered by Wino to the point that he didn't know how to come back for it. And again, it was a funny way of Wino using camaradas, knowing he was going to get washed up to minimize another Billy. Throughout the years, they manifest, politics changed inside. But when it came to this type of politicking, lies, betrayals, washing up people just because he could, Wino was just one of them individuals, right? Is why I think later on, Artie to try to clean some of the stuff he was doing, he's the one that took the decision to clip Wino, or he had, he sent them a appeal for us to not consider him camarada no more. It was bad, believe me, because it was Hardy, right? Sending them a appeal to a Sureño and having the Sureño put the directive out to everyone. When Ari did it, it was already co-signed by many people. But it's the type of things Wino was doing. You know, but on your opinion, what should the homie have done? If he wouldn't have followed Wino's directive, believe me, Wino would have had him got. You know, if I was in that position, I would have left it alone. We didn't send the lockup orders to be here. I would have sent the reason why. And as Chavo had told him, You can verify with the canales over there. They're aware I'm coming. But again, it comes with being smart, you know. They totally went out backwards, I believe. You know, you don't hear about it too much now, but for a while, they were utilizing channels by throwing heat on the next Billy, throwing the feds on them. To me, that's. But, anyways, that's the type of politics that was going on, and our camaradas were being utilized to minimize Billy's. You see, if it would have been a weak Billy, he would have felt they were questioning his status. A lot of Billys would have walked away, believe me. It just happened to be one of them Billys that, nuh-uh, he wasn't having it like that. But again, the message is this is what I say, you know. I don't ever try to minimize nobody when I say be smart. When I'm doing, I'm referring to these individuals that are full of lies, betrayals, and they have them dolphin mentality. They're gonna get out and spin you things around to try to get in your head and get you to agree to things that's gonna lead to suffering for yourself, for your family. So to stay on top of it, you know. Again, I'm not here for poison. I'm here so that when you see these individuals hitting you with BS, by the time they're coming, you're able to go and come back and be on top of them. That's it, that's all. But again, you know, stay true to yourself and loyal to loved ones. Hope I made sense. Buenas noches.